Hi everyone. So today I have a brush pen comparison video for you. The pens I have here today are not by any means the only brush pens out there. I only have what I've accumulated over the last couple of years. Some of these I've had for 4 years, some of them I've had for a couple months. I've actually never tested them side by side like this before, but I wanted to go ahead and show you all what it would be like. I looked up how the pens were described by the manufacturers on websites like Dick Blick and Jet Pens and Amazon, and I've listed all of the specifications to what they've said they can do and how they act, but we're still going to test them afterward because you never know. I also went ahead and added if they were refillable, if there's any other colors they come in, and other little facts. I'm not going to be giving prices on the actual initial pen because some places have them listed really expensive, while if you go on Amazon or eBay they can be super duper cheap, so it's up to you to find the cheapest price. So let's get on with it. Starting with the Pentel Pocket Brush Pen, it's said to have permanent ink, be water resistant, fade resistant, and it has cartridge refills. The cartridge refills, I will say, are rather expensive and you go through them very, very fast. In my opinion, the Pentel Pocket Brush Pen's brush tip is a little bit squishy for me. It's really difficult for me to make a very precise thin line. So that's just my opinion. A lot of people love this brush pen though, and it's a great starter. It's just a little bit expensive. Next is the Pentel Pigment Ink Brush. This brush, since it has a really long barrel, it's a very long pen, but it doesn't make it uncomfortable to hold. So this is said to be water resistant, fade proof, and it has barrel refills. So the great part at the end, you can buy a whole new piece and you just screw it into the brush tip at the top. The brush tip on this is really, really long, but I feel like it has really good control. The only thing I would say about this pen that I really don't like is that the ink is a little thick. It's kind of goopy. And I have had this pen for a while, but it's always been like this ever since the first day I bought it. Next is the Pentel Black Art Brush. It's very similar to the previous brush, but this one is dye-based, water-soluble, not light-fast, and it has barrel refills. The other cool thing about it is that it comes in gray and sepia. Typically whenever you buy this brush pen, it comes in a whole set, and I think mine even came with a empty Pentel Aquash. I feel the same way about this pen as I do the last pen with the brush tip. It's very easy to control even though it is very long. The ink in this is much more watery though, and I feel like it flows out very fast. Next is the Pentel Aquash Light Black. I decided to add this one in here because it is a brush pen even if it isn't exactly black like all the rest. So it says it has permanent ink, it's waterproof, it's a diluted black ink, and it can be layered to be darker, and it has barrel refills. I love this pen. The brush on it is probably my favorite out of all the Pentels. While it is light black, you'd think you'd be able to use it for light washes on backgrounds in large areas. I would suggest against that just because it dries extremely fast and you'll get a lot of layered lines, but I love this thing to death. It adds great shading and it works really well with other pens. Next is my all-time favorite, the Kuretake number 13 brush pen. The ink that comes with it is water-based dye ink, and it's water-soluble, and they are cartridges and they're refillable. So it's compatible with the Platinum Fountain Pen ink converter that can be filled with any technical pen ink or any ink that is okay with technical pens or other brush pens. You don't want to use something that's got really large particles. It will clog it. The brush tip is actually replaceable, so say you do clog it, you can just get a new one. And on top of that, they have a optional sable hair brush tip that you can replace any of the number 13 brush pens with. Makes it a little more fancy. Next is the Kuretake Bimoji brush pen. It's said to have water-based ink pigment, water resilient, it's not refillable, and this is the medium brush. There is a broad version out there as well. I really do like using this brush pen, even though it is not really the best for your money. There is one funny thing that happened to me with this exact pen. One day I was using it and it exploded. But obviously it survived because I put it back together. The brush tip came apart from the entire barrel of the pen, and I discovered that it has a squishy foam ink kind of absorbed foam bit in there, and interesting. I would go as far as to say that maybe if you were to take some of that technical ink, you may be able to refill that little foam thing, only if you can manage to get the pen to open again like I did. And last is the Pilot Pocket brush pen. This pen says it has a rubber brush nib. I did make the mistake of saying it had a felt tip in a previous video. It's not felt, it's rubber. My bad. It's not waterproof, it's not refillable, and this is the soft version of the pen. There's also a hard version out there as well. I hear that the hard one has better control. Though this is not a bristle brush tip like all the rest, it's still considered a brush pen. It's advertised as a brush pen. I know it's kind of weird. I really do like this pen. I like to use it over the top of my watercolor paintings. I think it looks really nice, but absolutely do not put water on top of this pen. So I'm just going to write down all the names of the brush pens and set up a marker and water resistant test. The marker I'm going to be using is a little Letraset Pro marker that I picked up recently, and I'm not a big fan of yellow, so I'm kind of okay with sacrificing it for this test. I know it's going to get filled up with black ink, and I'm kind of afraid of that, but gotta do it. So I did let all of the ink dry for about an hour, maybe a little bit more. I would say that an hour is not long enough for every single one of these pens. You can definitely tell right off the bat that some of them needed to be left alone for maybe an entire day. So the Pentel Pocket Brush Pen does not like any kind of alcohol-based markers. It picks up almost immediately. And it is supposed to be water resistant when dry, but I feel like it just wasn't dry enough. It did withstand a little bit of water, but definitely let this thing dry. Next is the Pentel Pigment Ink Color Brush thing. It doesn't like alcohol markers just like the other, and it's a little less water resistant, though I think it could be left to dry a little bit longer. I still wouldn't pile on the water on top of this thing. It seems to pick up a lot no matter what. Then we have the Pentel Art Brush in black, and this one doesn't like alcohol markers, and it is said to be water soluble, and it is very true. It's very water soluble. Good job. Next is the Pentel Aquash in light black. I feel like it does really well with the alcohol markers, and it could just be that it's really light that I'm not being able to see it, but I really think it does well, and it is very waterproof, so it works really well. Next we have the Kuretake No. 13 brush pen. The ink that comes with it is not alcohol proof, and it's also water soluble. I feel like it's not as water soluble as other water soluble inks, but I might just be being hard on it. Then the Kuretake Bimoji medium brush pen, it's labeled as bristles, so I wrote that there. It does quite well with the alcohol markers, but I think if it were left to dry for a little while longer, it would probably be excellent for line work underneath alcohol markers. It's probably the most resistant to water. And last we have the Pilot Pocket Brush Pen. This one does amazing with alcohol markers. I think it probably takes the cake for that. And it says it's not waterproof, and no, it's not waterproof at all. I would go as far to say it's water soluble, but that would probably mean that it would still mess up with markers, but I don't know, it's the most unique one of them all. So now I'm just going to show you what kind of pressure you can put on these pens to see what kind of line weights you can get. Some of them keep their shape, while the others can be compressed and make really interesting lines. Some of them can be used very quickly, some of them can't because their ink flow is a little bit slow, so it gives a dry brush effect, which can be pretty cool in some situations. In the end, it all depends on how you want to use a brush pen and what kind of art you want to create with them. While a thicker brush might make better lines for you, you may want something that's really thin. Maybe you're going for more line variances, or maybe you just want a dry brush effect on your piece. My experiences may be completely different from some other people's out there that have the same exact pens as me. That being said, I wanted to show you guys my comparisons, and I hope this was interesting. Maybe you liked a pen enough to go out and buy it, and if you did, I would love to see what you guys create with it. But yeah, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next week.